The Anderson family reunion was in full swing. My parents' suburban backyard was packed with the usual crowd, uncles boasting about their latest business moves, aunts comparing their kids' accomplishments, and my cousins, all of whom held high-powered corporate jobs, huddled near the expensive grill they'd gifted my dad last Christmas. I lingered by the refreshment table, casually checking sales figures on my phone. With Black Friday just around the corner, my e-commerce platform, Nova Retail, was gearing up for its busiest season yet. Still messing around with that little online shop, Megan? I glanced up to see my cousin Peter, a smug look on his face, proudly sporting his company logo on his polo. Anderson's department stores, the family business that had been struggling ever since online shopping took over. Someone has to stay ahead of the curve, I answered coolly, slipping my phone into my pocket. No need to let him know my little online shop had processed over $50 million in sales just last month. Real retail needs real stores, he sneered, real inventory, real employees, not some website selling cheap knockoffs. If only he knew that Nova Retail operated 5 massive fulfillment centers, employed over 1,000 people, and partnered directly with manufacturers to create exclusive product lines. But I'd learned long ago to keep my success under wraps. It was far more amusing this way. Speaking of real stores, Aunt Margaret appeared, wine glass in hand. Peter just opened Anderson's 15th location. Isn't that wonderful?
I nodded politely.
All too aware that market research on my laptop showed Anderson's department stores had lost 40% of its market share to online competitors like Nova Retail. You know, Megan, Aunt Margaret continued, her voice dripping with feigned concern, Peter might be able to get you a real job at one of the stores. Something in inventory, perhaps. It might be a bit more stable than selling things on the internet. The irony almost made me laugh. Just last week, I'd signed the lease on a new fulfillment center, one that would double our capacity. Meanwhile, Anderson's was quietly shuttering stores while pretending to expand. Thanks, Aunt Margaret, but I'm doing just fine. Fine? Uncle George wandered over, overhearing the tail end of the conversation. Sweetie, you're 32, living in a rented apartment, and playing shopkeeper on the internet. That's not fine. I thought about my penthouse condo, the beach house I bought last summer, the private jet share I used for business trips, and the 8-figure acquisition offer I turned down last month because it wasn't enough. The world is changing, I said instead. Online retail is the future. That set them off. For the next 20 minutes, I was lectured about real businesses, traditional values, and the importance of physical stores. My other cousins gathered around, eager to join in the mockery of my so-called misguided internet venture. You can't build a real business without seeing your customers face to face, Peter insisted. I thought about Nova's 12 million active users and our 98% customer satisfaction rating. A website isn't a legacy, Uncle George declared. Anderson's has been in this family for 3 generations. True, and it was about to enter its 4th, just not in the way they imagined. At least get a part-time job, Aunt Margaret suggested, her voice tinged with concern. Something to fall back on when this internet thing fails. I checked my phone again. Another $200,000 in sales in the past hour. Some failure. The conversation eventually moved on to more exciting topics, like Peter's new yacht or Uncle George's recently secured country club membership. I slipped away to the garden's quiet corner, opening my laptop to check on some final details. Miss Anderson, my assistant's message appeared. The documents are ready for review. Perfect timing. I typed back. Send them to legal for final approval. We move forward tomorrow. What my family didn't know was that their precious Anderson's department stores was on the brink of collapse. Their outdated business model, refusal to embrace e-commerce, and bloated overhead had made them vulnerable. Their stock had dropped 60% in the past year. I'd been watching, waiting, and quietly buying shares through shell companies. Tomorrow, they'd receive an email that would shatter their comfortable world. Hey, internet girl, Peter called from the group. We're taking a family photo. Try to look professional for once. I closed my laptop, smoothing the hem of my simple sundress. They had no idea it cost more than Peter's entire wardrobe. Not that I'd ever share that with them. The family gathered around the pricey grill, positioning themselves like royalty, Uncle George at the center, Peter and his siblings on either side, all of them wearing their success like armor. Megan, maybe stand in the back, Aunt Margaret suggested, and put that phone away. We want this to look respectable. I took my place, fighting to hide my smile. Tomorrow, They would learn exactly what my little online shop had become. Tomorrow, the Anderson family business would face its greatest challenge yet, and it would come from the cousin they'd always underestimated. As the camera flashed, I made a mental note to keep this photo. It'd be perfect for the About Us section of Nova Retail's website, once we owned Anderson's department stores. After all, family businesses should keep family photos, shouldn't they? The next morning, I sat in my penthouse office, watching the sun rise over the city. My laptop displayed the email that would change everything, the official takeover offer from Nova Retail to Anderson's department stores. Send it, I instructed my assistant over the phone. Already done, she replied. Your uncle should be receiving it any minute. The board meeting scheduled for 10 a.m. I smiled, picturing the chaos unfolding at Anderson's corporate headquarters. They'd been so busy mocking online retail that they never saw who was quietly buying up their struggling company's shares. Exactly 7 minutes later, my phone rang. What is this? Uncle George's voice was shaking with rage. Nova Retail? Some internet company thinks they can buy us out? Good morning, Uncle George, I said, keeping my tone calm. I take it you received our offer. Our? He hesitated. What do you mean, our? Perhaps you should check the signature block on that email. There was a long pause. Then, the furious clicking of a keyboard. Megan Anderson, CEO and founder of Nova Retail, he read aloud, his voice dropping to a whisper. This is impossible. Is it? I replied, unbothered. According to your company's quarterly reports, which, by the way, are quite concerning, Nova Retail already owns 26% of Anderson's shares. We've been buying them quietly for months, while your stock price dropped. You're lying, he sputtered. That little website of yours couldn't possibly. That little website did $1.2 billion in sales last year, I interrupted, my voice firm. We operate 5 fulfillment centers. Our 6th is under construction. And our market valuation is 10 times what Anderson's is worth right now. Would you like me to share our financials at the board meeting? The line went dead. I glanced at my watch. 3, 2, 1. My phone buzzed with messages. Peter, this is a joke, right? Aunt Margaret, please call me immediately. 3 cousins, we need to talk. I ignored them all and pulled up the live security feed from Anderson's headquarters. The lobby was in chaos. Family members were arriving, some looking panicked, Peter's Tesla screeching into a reserved spot, Aunt Margaret's Mercedes nearly slamming into a pole. At 9:59 a.m., I walked into their boardroom. The security guards, who, unbeknownst to them, now worked for me, nodded respectfully as I passed. What is she doing here? Peter demanded, eyes wide, as I entered the room. I sat at the head of the table, opening my briefcase. I believe the CEO of Nova Retail should be present for this discussion, don't you? Aunt Margaret's usually composed demeanor cracked. You're behind this. Amazing what you can build with just a website, isn't it? I said, passing around documents. Now, let's talk about the reality of your situation. I clicked a button, and the room's screens flickered to life, displaying Anderson's true financial data. Not the polished figures they flaunted at family gatherings, but the harsh truth. Your revenue has dropped 60% in the last 3 years. E-commerce is eating up your market share. You've quietly closed 3 stores while pretending to expand. And your attempt to launch a website, I brought up their outdated, clunky platform. Well, let's just say it's not exactly competitive. This is ridiculous. Peter shot to his feet, his face flushed. Yesterday, you were nobody, and now you think. Yesterday, I laughed, I processed more sales before lunch than your flagship store does in a month. Yesterday, my little online shop acquired 2 smaller competitors. Yesterday, I signed a lease on a fulfillment center bigger than all your remaining stores combined. I turned to Uncle George, who sat frozen and pale at the far end of the table. Remember when you said websites aren't a legacy? I asked, my voice calm. Well, Nova Retail is about to become your legacy's only chance for survival. He swallowed hard before finally speaking, his voice shaky. What do you want? Total acquisition, I said. We'll keep the Andersons' name, it still carries weight with your older customers. Most of the store employees will keep their jobs, but but they'll need retraining for our integrated online-offline business model. And management? Peter asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Revised, I replied, though I might be able to find you an entry-level role in one of our fulfillment centers. You did say real retail needs real inventory, right? Aunt Margaret opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. Before anyone else dismisses this offer, there are 2 things you should know, I said. First, I already control enough shares to force major changes, and second, I pulled up another screen showing their competitors' stock prices. 3 other companies are preparing hostile takeover bids. My offer is the only one that keeps the Anderson name intact. A stunned silence filled the room as the weight of my words sank in. Their precious family business was on the brink of collapse, and their only salvation came from the cousin they had belittled at yesterday's reunion. The offer expires at 5 p.m. I added, standing to leave. I straightened my designer suit, knowing they'd never be able to afford to wait that long. How? Uncle George's voice cracked. How did you build all of this without us knowing? Because you never bothered to look, I replied, my tone sharp. You were too busy defending your real business from the future to notice that the future was sitting at your family reunion, checking sales figures on her phone. I turned to leave but paused at the door. Oh, and Peter, about that comment regarding Chinese knockoffs, I said with a smile, our products are actually made in our own facilities. In fact, we even supply inventory to some of your high-end brands. You'd know that if you ever bothered to check your sourcing documents. The acquisition made headlines. E-commerce giant Nova Retail acquires historic Anderson's department stores. The business world was captivated by the story of the overlooked cousin who had bought her family's company. Uncle George retired rather than work for me. Peter tried negotiating an executive position but ended up with a job at a competitor, a smaller company that Nova hadn't acquired yet. Aunt Margaret stopped speaking to me entirely, though she still collects dividends from the shares I allowed her to keep. Anderson's stores were transformed into modern retail hubs, blending the ease of online shopping with an enhanced in-store experience. Sales doubled in the first year. The Anderson name lived on, just not in the way they'd expected. I kept their boardroom exactly as it was, though I added one small detail, a framed photo from that last family reunion. Everyone stood gathered around the grill, proudly wearing their success like armor, while I stood in the back, checking my phone, probably processing more sales in that moment than their stores made all day. Last week, I received an invitation to next year's family reunion. The location? The country club where Uncle George used to boast about his membership. The one Nova Retail now owns. I think I'll attend. After all, someone has to explain to them how playing shopkeeper on the internet really works. Though this time, I have a feeling they'll listen when I talk about the future of retail. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't just proving people wrong, it's becoming so successful that they have no choice but to work for you. Or in my family's case, becoming so successful that you own their entire legacy. As for my little online shop, we just opened our 7th fulfillment center, in the building that used to be Anderson's flagship store. I kept their sign, though I added a small plaque beneath it. Anderson's store, in Nova Retail Company, building the future they couldn't see. Sometimes, success is the sweetest revenge, especially when it's delivered straight to their inbox.